It's the greatest sport in the world where we talk walk-ons, walk-offs, first downs, and touchdowns, and much, much more. Welcome to Cone's Cadence. Welcome to football. I'm joined here by Josh Moore, former UCLA and FAU football player, now content creator. Josh, appreciate you joining the program.
Yeah, of course. I love it.
So let's get straight into it. So you won a state championship in high school. That's an achievement that few athletes get to experience. But you not only achieved this during your senior year at Marietta High School in Georgia, you were also one of the standout players on that team. What was that experience like when the clock hit zeros and the celebration began?
Honestly, it was unlike anything else I'd ever felt. I just felt a huge sense of accomplishment and relief because my school had always been close. Like my freshman year, we lost the state championship. Sophomore year, junior year, we lost in the fourth round and third round of playoffs. But senior year, it finally felt like, okay, we're gonna do this. Like there's no one that can realistically stop us. So when we finally got to that moment, we knew we had the lead because we were up by about like 17 when the clock finally hit zero. So we knew like it was coming. So it was just finally nice to actually see it and like have it secured and not like let anything happen to it. Like it was finally ours. So that was a really, really great feeling. And I still cherish that to this day.
Of course, yeah, I feel like less than 1% of athletes either get to win a state championship, a national championship in college, or a Super Bowl or something like that. So that's just an awesome feeling. Great that you got to experience that. And then getting into college football, obviously, like I said, played at UCLA, played at FAU. What was your welcome to college football moment? I know mine was, I know you know Latrell Jean from FAU. We were doing a
Yeah.
little nine on seven drill. And the scout, so for the people that don't know what scout team is, basically it's the backups on offense going against the starters on defense to prepare them for a game. Same vice versa for defense and offense as well. So I was on scout offense. I'm a freshman going against the seniors and stuff like that, just getting them prepped up. And the coach is telling me, hey, no matter what on this play, you're going to pull the ball. So I pull it, and Latrell's sitting right there. Next thing I know, my face mask is literally on my nostril. And it was just a I'm 2 inches into the dirt, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm at FAU." So that was kind of my moment. I just wanted to hear yours as well. If you had something like that, whether it was being late or some moment where you got run over, or you got beat deep, or something.
Yeah, so I probably had a couple of those at UCLA. First, when I got there, I just felt like really confused because practice happened so quickly, and I kind of felt like I couldn't keep up. Like some of the drills, you're just supposed to jump in, and I'm like, I'm the freshman, like I don't like know this. Like I'm expecting to be like, yo, Josh, go in, or like, yo, like I'm expecting the coach to have a little bit more like say on who goes in on like certain drills and stuff, but that didn't really happen, so I was kind of confused there. And then I know on the scout team, I was going against Kyle Phillips, who was like a third or fourth round pick to the Titans. He's still there right now. Dorian Thompson Robinson, he's playing for the Browns right now. He was at QB. Zach Charbonnet, who's playing on the Seahawks right now. I was having to like go up against those guys every practice. Shoot, Greg Dulcich on the Broncos, Britton Browns on the Raiders. Like three or four of those linemen are in the league right now too. So basically, like eight of those 11 starters I was going against on scout team are in the league right now. So like I was having to go against them every day, which was not easy at all.
Yeah, I got you, and that's great, especially for your development. Obviously, I mean it's tough, especially beginning as a freshman. And I was going up against some guys as well, like Leighton McCarthy and Zion Gilbert as well, who was on the Giants, and he played for the Packers a little bit. And just going against those guys, obviously I'm not playing football right now, but that experience bettered me in life because when you kind of just jump right into something and you kind of have to struggle at first, it teaches you like, okay, I got to wake up, I got to lock in because I'm going against the best, and I got to raise my standard to be the best and compete against those guys. So, can you share a favorite memory or funny story from your time in the locker room at UCLA, FAU, or shoot, even your time in high school?
My favorite memory is probably when we beat LSU because like we weren't expected to win that game because LSU was they were coming off I think they didn't have a great year after they won the championship with Burrow, but they were still like LSU, so everybody expected them to like beat us. And we ended up beating them. I don't even know what the final score was, but we ended up beating them. It was just a great feeling. You were just like, oh my God, we started running around the field. We were talking about like players storming the field, which doesn't normally happen. Uh, but that was really cool. We got back to the locker room, we did all those speeches, and then we're kind of just going crazy. Everybody's dancing because like we beat this SEC opponent and no one's expecting us to as like a Pac-12 team. So that was a really great feeling.
Yeah, so speaking of the SEC and you guys being in the Pac-12, I know you posted some videos recently about who the best conference is and NIL and stuff like that. So how do you think NIL has impacted college football? And then also, do you think it's leveled the playing field, or do you still see that one conference is better than everybody else, whether that's the Big Ten, the SEC, or one of the other Power Four schools or conferences?
Okay, so there's like two types of NIL. There's the NIL a player can do by themselves, maybe with the help of the university a little bit, and then straight up like pay for play, which is like most of the stuff, most of the headlines you see, like I think Darian Mensah transferred to Duke and he's gonna get 8 million over 2 years. That's just pay to play. Like he's not really doing anything for that. He's basically like he's on like the salary from Duke or whatever. Actual NIL does kind of depend on your school. Like if you go to Ohio State, it's gonna be a lot easier than if you go to FAU or Akron, just because it's a bigger name, so more people want to work with those bigger name schools. But you still have an opportunity to do whatever you want if you put your mind to it. Because like guys like me, like Brendan Dwyer, he plays basketball at Florida Gulf Coast University. He does a lot of NIL stuff, even though he is a walk-on their basketball team because he makes videos, he makes people laugh, he knows how to connect with people. He's a really great storyteller, and he's just a really funny guy. So like you can make it in NIL if you really put your mind to it, even if you aren't exactly like a five-star or top player or a starter, all conference player. There's still a place for everybody.
Yeah, that's huge for athletes to know because obviously there's so many different ways to make money with social media now and just so many different platforms that you can get on. So hearing that from a guy like you who has thousands and thousands of followers, that should inspire some young athletes who want to get into the social media world as well. And then kind of jumping back into your time at UCLA, I want to know if you could go back to your freshman year of college football with what you know now. Is there anything you would do differently that season or that time when you were there?
I wish I was more assertive. And I wish there was like more of a plan for me. Like the second part I couldn't really control because I played safety and it kind of felt like not like I was going through the motions, but I was just trying to like get the ropes of just like being in college playing. But like it felt like the coaches were moving faster than that because like right after the season they were like, okay, we want you to move to linebacker. And I was like, what? I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, would I be good at linebacker? Like, what's the plan for me here? And I remember my coach was kind of like, that's just the higher ups told me that, and then so like I was talking to the head coach, and he was just like, "Yeah, we'll see. We're just making a change because we think that you'd be better there." I'm like, "Wow, so that's it." I'm like, I feel like I really get a shot because I felt like I could have been better at safety, and I know I would have been. I just needed a little bit more time to like learn because like I mean, it's something that is on me. Like I didn't under like because like I pride myself on like knowing the plays and stuff, but like there was like simple things I felt like I just didn't learn as quickly as I probably should have. And then once I got to FAU is when I really like learned everything and everything kind of clicked with like the playbook and stuff. So it just took me a little bit more time to adjust, but kind of is what it is. Uh, but you can't really change that. But if I could, I'd tell myself like, hey, you have to learn this like now. And then that would have made me better during practice because there was like some coverages we would run where I would constantly get beat. I'm like, why am I getting beat? But it'd be like I was running cover two from 12 yards deep and my corner wasn't getting a jam. So that whole shot was gonna be open because my corner's not giving me a jam. And I'm thinking he's gonna give me a jam and he's not and he's taught not to or whatever. So I'm like, well shit, that's why I'm getting beat because I'm not fully understanding what the coverage entails. So it's just like little stuff like that. I wish I could tell myself like, hey, you need to get with. I actually had another safety with me. He was the starter this year. His name was Q Lake. He starts for the Rams now. I wish I would have got with him more and been like, hey, I don't care how long it takes. Please just like let me follow you wherever you go. I don't care if I have to go to your class with you. It's like you need to please show me this playbook and show me how to be successful in it.
Yeah, I think that's huge because I feel like a lot of guys don't necessarily know how to learn a college playbook. Like sometimes in high school, you kind of get dinky dunky stuff, just like cut and dry. But in college, obviously, it's a lot more descriptive. Everybody's a good athlete. It doesn't really matter where you're playing at what level. Like, I mean, shoot, Division III has good athletes. I mean, there's still some guys that go to the NFL. I mean, even NAIA, there's there's guys that can really ball and should be playing at a higher level. But your point that you were talking about where it was cover two and that corner was supposed to jam and you weren't really on the same page with him, I think that that's huge as well because in terms of coverages, especially as a defender, you guys got to know like, okay, this is our weakness. So the offense is probably going to try to go to this if we're in this coverage. If we're not rolling coverage and we're kind of just playing what we're in some type of way, shape, or form, like I got to know where our weakness is because if I don't, the offense is probably going to exploit it. And yeah, that's really my perspective on that there. And I feel like nowadays at the Division I level, everybody has that physical talent, but 90% of it is that mental aspect and 10% is really the physical capability. Those numbers are probably skewed a little bit. But at the same time, in terms of that, even being a quarterback, like I'll give an example, KJ Jefferson at UCF. He had 2 great years at Arkansas before he transferred. In 2021, he threw for 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And in 2022, he threw for 24 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So his confidence was through the roof. He was stiff arming guys when they were playing against Alabama, rolling out, throwing the ball. And then when he gets to UCF, especially being a former quarterback myself, you could kind of tell that he wasn't as confident because he'd have like a Y cross coming over the field and it would be just butt naked, wide open to Kobe Hudson or one of the guys. And he would just try to baby the ball. Like he would just try to lob it versus driving that football in there. And you could kind
Yeah.
of tell when he was throwing those deep balls, it was fine. But anything short and intermediate sometimes, like the easy stuff becomes hard when you're overthinking and you're not confident in your mechanics, things like that. So in terms of that, how much did you think that your mental health and your confidence maybe played a factor too at UCLA? I know you were saying that it was the learning capabilities and trying to get with those other guys, but was it like a confidence thing too? Like you're just getting in there. There's all these guys that are great athletes too. You're a 4-star coming in, but all these other guys, like I said, are in the best shape of their lives as well and had been training.
I mean, honestly, I didn't feel like the guys ahead of me, like, except for like the starters, who was Q Lake and Blaylock, like they were really, really good players. Besides that, I didn't feel like anybody was like that much like better than me, like physically at all. So I'm like, dude, why am I so low in the depth chart? I'm like, those guys aren't better than me. But maybe they knew the playbook a little better, but I'm like, physically wise, they're not better than me. And it kind of felt like the coach saw me as like, and they kind of like wrote me off and were kind of already like planning for the next guys coming in because in California, like they mostly look for guys that are going to like that are coming from St. John Bosco, Mater Dei, or whatever. So it kind of felt like they were already like looking forward to those guys and kind of just looking over me. And even like one of my guys, DJ, he ended up transferring to Arizona. Like they were just like kind of looking over. So they just like didn't really care that we were there. So that wasn't good. But like I feel like my confidence definitely suffered because I remember like vividly one play where I was playing cover four and I was supposed to like drop down a little bit and I played it like because you're on a scout team, you play it how you think it's supposed to be played because they
Yeah.
tell you how to run. And so I dropped down and then like the QB's trying to throw an RPO behind me and I literally jump up and I'm literally about to pick it. Like it's like right in my hands. And for whatever reason, like I get scared. I literally put my hands down because I'm like, wait, am I not supposed to do this? And I just remember at that moment, I was like, what? I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I literally like, I mean, when I say I had a pick in my hands, like I literally had the ball. Like I jumped up, like I don't think I'd ever jumped up that high before. I was like, shit, this is mine. But then I was like, wait. I started second guessing myself mid-air. And so I put my hands down. Uh, and I know the receiver, I looked back and the receiver dropped it because he probably thought I was gonna pick that. So he didn't expect the ball to come through. But like it was like stuff like that where I was just like, I kept second guessing myself. And then like I try to like would fix it, try to like overcompensate, but like, okay, next practice, I'm gonna go like all out effort. I'm gonna run to the ball. I'm gonna smash everything I see. And then I would do that and still just get like no recognition for it. So I was like, it kind of just felt like being on scout team was just like so detrimental to me. Maybe that my ego was too big at the time, which it probably was, but like I still felt like I had something to give and it felt like they gave up on me way too early. So that's just kind of how it is, how it ended up there. But yeah, I'm still grateful for the experience.
No, and I completely agree. I feel like for me it was kind of the opposite in a way. I kind of came in to the season late in COVID in the fall of 2020, so I had missed summer workouts because they were bringing in the walk-ons at different time periods because I guess that was the NCAA regulations or whatever it was. So I came in and I was like, I'm going to learn the whole playbook. I'm going to know everything. So if I get a chance or somebody gets quarantined or whatnot, because you know how it was then, like people were getting quarantined and 2 weeks, boom, the starter, the second string, and the third string is out for 2 weeks, and you're right in, and you better know your stuff, kind of thing. So I actually had that opportunity happen, and I took advantage of it. David Kelly, who you know really well, and was a big impact in your recruiting process at FAU. He was the one who really recruited me and was impressed with me. I got to go with the ones one day and showed out. They weren't expecting me to really know anything. I was only there for the first month or two, but after that, I actually got quarantined. So I kind of got stuck in a situation where I was just kind of thrown into the back after that as well. But I think situations like that and being on scout team, it's definitely tough. And in terms of learning a playbook, I think that there's a way to go about it. Because like I said, not a lot of guys necessarily know the right way to learn it. You don't want to just come home and stare at the notebook and just kind of do those things. What I do personally, I like to get the expo marker out, maybe get with a couple of teammates, and somebody will signal the formation and just draw everything up. So then you're literally, no matter what position you are, if you're a receiver, tight end, DB, for learning the defensive scheme, like you're learning where everybody should be at. So it's not like I just need to learn where I'm at. It's like, no, you're learning from a quarterback or a linebacker or a safety's perspective who's running the defense, how and where everybody's supposed to be, because obviously that's crucial in terms of getting guys lined up and things like that. And I'm sure on that play where you were talking about that RPO, you probably had run fit. So you probably were doing the exact right thing. But these coaches sometimes they'll be yelling at you on scout team like, hey, they're not going to do that in the game. But sometimes they do. It's not always what you expect. So in terms of making plays like that, I completely understand that. And it's unfortunate that you had to go through that situation, because I think you should be able to make plays like that, especially when you're doing your job. Quarters coverage, a lot of people don't know it. In a way, it is a run stop defense. Like one of those safeties, when he sees that handoff, that quarterback put the ball in the running back's stomach, like he might have to come down and fill a little bit.
Yeah,
So
it's not like I had seen the play before. I'm just playing the way they told me to play because I remember it was this guy I was mimicking. He was number 32. He played for Fresno State. He ended up transferring to Oregon after that year because he was a really good player. And they're like, oh, he's a run stopper. He's basically a linebacker playing safety. And I don't know if he stopped it in the game, but we lost that game against Fresno State. I know that 100% because Jake Hayner threw for like 400 yards and 5 touchdowns on us. So like, and we kept up, but like we ended up losing by 1 score because he scored to end the game. But like, I don't know. I just felt like when I saw that play, I'm like, you can't like say he's not gonna play it like this because I've never seen the play before and I played it like this. So like,
exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. That's why in terms of especially coaches when they're running scout team, it's like kind of let these guys react. I understand what the card is like, but if they don't know the play, it's not like you're like, hey, run it again, run it again. It's not like the fifth time running the play and some guy does this just to get in the spot where he knows the quarterback's going to throw the ball. It's like, okay, you're being a scout team all-star. That's different. But you're running the play, you're seeing it for the first time, you're just reacting to it. You're filling that hole. Like if you as a quarterback, that's his fault. Like the offensive coordinator should be yelling at him. It's like if you don't have that throw, force the give. Don't just try to throw it into coverage on an RPO, because that's most likely, not most likely, but sometimes your only option is to throw that slant behind the read key. If you're not throwing that, you're giving it to the back. So just give it to the back, let it ride. If we get 2-3 yards or if we just get stopped at the line of scrimmage, that's fine. It's better than throwing an interception, run back for a touchdown, and things like that. So sometimes on scout team, these coaches are just I feel like some coaches let their ego get to them a little bit, and it's like, especially just in situations in college where there's coaching changes. So, say you get recruited to UCLA. This is just an example; it didn't necessarily happen, but say you're there with Chip Kelly and you end up staying all 4 years. But say the second year, Chip Kelly gets fired, they bring a new coach in, whatever it is, and the new coach comes in and you're a 4-star player. Say you were getting some play time your freshman year. They bring in a new coach. And he's like, oh, no, I want my guys to come in and play, because they want it to look good on them. So they'll recruit their guys over the guys that may be better, maybe were on the team before. And I think I've had some other buddies experience that, especially at FAU when the new coaching staff had come in and they kind of wanted their guys to play over the guys that had been there, played whatever it was, special teams, defense, defensive line, DB, whatever. Just those experiences. It's really unfortunate, because I feel like coaches should remember, like, hey, I'm here to benefit these kids. Like, yeah, it's a job. I'm making money. It's a business, and we want to win. but give everybody an opportunity to really show what they can do. Because if not, it's like, how are you maximizing your team's potential? If you don't know what Josh Moore can do as a safety and he's not confident back there, it's like, as a DB coach, just be like, hey, just play like you were playing in high school. Like, we trust you. We recruited you here for a reason. Just go out there, relax, be instinctual. If you get a pick on scout team and the offensive coaches yell at you, just come to me. And it's like, we want you to be able to react. We don't want you to have to play like, should I pick this ball off because I don't want to get yelled at? Like, you shouldn't have to think like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know like back then when Turpel was that coach, he was basically the offensive coordinator and everything. So he ran that whole side. So it kind of felt like it was us against them. Like obviously like you're playing against them, but it kind of felt like, yo, I don't want to do shit. You don't want to do anything wrong. But I'm looking at my other DBs, we're like, yo, like, like we can't realistically do anything because he won't let us do anything, you know? So it
And
was that's how it was.
that's funny because I lived with two DBs my freshman year in the dorm, so they were kind of saying the same thing. It was the defensive scout team at FAU, but in terms of me being on scout team my freshman year, our defensive coordinator was Jim Leavitt, and Jim, fiery guy. We had this linebacker Chase Lassiter, and I mean, I know you know Chase as well, but he was just fired up, and Jim would always be trying to get the best out of him every single practice, making sure he's really on him, making sure he's filling the gap that he's supposed to fill or doing what he's supposed to do. And it really just fired up the offense to want to make them better because Jim was such a fiery guy and he always wanted the best out of his players. And I think that's what you really want as a coach. You don't want a guy that's just going to come in and try to make changes everywhere and whatnot. Yeah, sometimes you do need changes in a lot of places, but you do have to know who was truly a leader on that team before you got there. And I feel like you have to really put players. I talked about this on the last podcast, but you really want to put players in positions to win. So you don't want to have a quarterback like me, for example. When I was a senior in high school, I played for Mike Kruczek, head coach at UCF, coach with the Arizona Cardinals. And we didn't run a lot of like zone read stuff. Like we ran a lot of RPO because I was really good at that. Same offense now that they're running. They have a freshman quarterback who's absolutely remarkable. I'll give him a shout out. His name's Jackson Stecher, and he could run the ball all over the place, do everything, and throw it 60 yards in the air as a freshman. Honestly, the most impressive freshman I've ever seen, class of 2028. And they run the offense differently with him in there because, yeah, he could run the ball a little bit more. He's a little bit more athletic, but they also have different receivers out there. Like when I was there, we had a receiver commit. His name's Tommy Tite. We could put him on one side, isolate him, and have him run a bang 8 versus 1 high coverage and try to throw the ball right in between the corner and the safety for a touchdown. If he catches that in the hole, he's scoring. Versus they have guys like receiver, we call him Mouse. His name's Davon Washington. He's a little bit of a smaller guy, but he'll beat you with speed, and so he'll beat anybody in the slot. But you don't want to really necessarily isolate him because he's a little bit of a shorter guy. You just have to play to these guys' strengths. Is basically the point that I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
And those coaches that are able to do that and adapt, those are the ones that are the most successful. You see Nick Saban in college, like back in 2008 and all that stuff, they were under center, giving the ball. They were giving the ball to guys like Mark Ingram. And then when Derrick Henry was there, Derrick Henry just going under center, go more of a pro style. And then when Bryce Young and times when he gets there and times have changed a little bit, they're running more RPO. They're in the gun. He's willing to change things up. And obviously he's a defensive coach. So him just saying like, okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. No ego involved. Like I want to bring in an offensive coordinator that can kind of implement some of those things. And so we can adapt and we can win. We're not just going to say, okay, we're going to keep running the same stuff into a wall and keep running into an 8-man box or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
that's also huge. And kind of adding on to that, as a quarterback, I use my eyes and my shoulders to look off and manipulate defenders to get them to move where I wanted them to go. From your perspective as a DB, how did you combat that? And how did you ultimately bait quarterbacks into throwing your direction, whether that was high school or college in practice or at FAU after you left UCLA?
Uh, Essentially, the only time I'm really looking at the quarterback is if I'm just like straight up in the zone. Like, let's say I have a flat, like I'm buzz hinging or like I'm in the post. But most times, if I'm in like cover 4, I'm honestly just reading my receiver and going off of him. So
Okay.
like it kind of depends on the coverage. Like if it's just like a straight drop back zone, it's like all right, cool. We're all looking at the QB. I'll like what's it called? I'll like lean where he's looking, and I'll see kind of like out of the corner of my eye what routes are like developing over there and try to like break towards those. Like sometimes I knew I remember one play against Tyreek, he played QB for FAU. I was a post safety, ball was snapped. He looks over to the sideline a guy was going on a wheel route, a running back, and so I immediately just ran because I'm like, he's throwing this. I'm just like, I felt it, he's throwing this, and I went up to get it. Me and the running back both went up at the same time, and honestly, I wish I had looked at the running back before to so I could like judge where he was going, so I could have stepped in front of him. But we run up at the same time, both. It's like we just ran into each other trying to catch the ball because I'm just trying to get there. I'm like, dude, so I was really far away since I was a post player, but yeah, sometimes you kind of just have to like go off your instincts, but then also like you don't want to be wrong because if you are the post player and you jump something and the quarterback doesn't throw the ball, then you're kind of screwed because
Oh
then
yeah.
that whole the field is open. If there's a post or anything coming, you're screwed. Like I know like a double post play, like where it's a post by two and post by number one, that's what that's designed for. That post by two for the post player to come jump that and for that big post to be wide open. It's like that's like something like you have to like be really disciplined about. Like, okay, if something's coming in front of me, something might be coming in behind me. So you have to be just really careful with how you jump things, especially for the post player. If you're another kind of player, like let's say you have a post and cover four or you have a dig and cover four, you have more license to jump that because you're reading number two and if number two goes vertical, that's your guy, period. So the moment he makes that cut, you can jump it. Or if he goes an out, you can jump it because that's your guy, period. So yeah, it kind of really just depends on what coverage you guys are running. And also like maybe like if it's a blitz coverage, because like like the ball has to come out hot, then like you can kind of sit there and you might have like I know sometimes I would have like hot two. So it means if number two does anything quick, like basically said, don't let number two get inside of you. If he does anything quick out, just take him. So and it was a blitz coverage. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna sit there. I'm just gonna sit there, let him come to me and hopefully the quarterback's getting the ball out soon. Because if he doesn't, then that's where I'm then that's where I'm flat on my feet. Like I'm kind of done for if the quarterback doesn't get the ball out quick. So kind of relying on that blitz to make the coverage actually work. So it there's a whole thing. It just depends on what coverage and what the scheme is and what's going on and down distance and all that type of thing.
And yeah, I really like how you mentioned the point where you want to look at the receiver to kind of see where he's at versus just reading the quarterback's eyes. And I think today, and it's really just a perfect example from that Ohio State and Caleb Downs, that interception that had really clinched it. This is after Jack Sawyer's long return for a touchdown, which was phenomenal play, probably top play in Ohio State history, one of the top five. That's, I mean, extremely memorable, especially with their rich storied history. That's awesome for Jack, especially having Quinn Ewers as his roommate, um, and things like that. But going back to what we were just talking about, you looking at the receiver first versus just staring down the quarterback, that's huge because that perfect example is Caleb Downs in that game. He's dropping back, and he's as he's dropping, he's flipping his hips. He's turned one way, and he's staring at the receiver the whole time because he knows at some point he's going to break, and as soon as he breaks, he flips his hips, runs downhill, picks the ball off, game over, takes his helmet off, runs to the back of the end zone. The whole defense is celebrating, but things like that. And Kurt Herbstreit described that perfectly. I thought that was huge versus him just saying like, okay, he dropped here. Like he really went in depth and said he dropped, but as he was dropping, he was staring down the receiver because he knew from film study at some point he was going to break, whether it was in, out, whatever. He breaks inside, jumps the route, game's over, and they're on to the national championship. And what a season for Texas. But Ohio State, I think we knew after they had dominated Oregon that they were probably going to end up in the national championship, no matter
Yeah.
which SEC team they played and whatnot. And I've always kind of been a guy that's like, hey, the SEC is better than everybody else. But nowadays, honestly, it's just a level playing field. And shoot, even the Big Ten has been balling this year. So
Yeah.
especially in bowl season, Alabama losing to Michigan, not a good look for the SEC and
Yeah.
things like that. But I do think that NIL, there should be a limit to it. Like guys shouldn't be able to transfer within the first 4 games of the season. Like once that season starts, like I get it's a business, but you don't just quit on your team in the middle of the year. I don't think that I don't really believe in that. But
I
and
don't
yeah,
really like people do that either. They're like, oh, I'm sitting out for a year to transfer. It's like it's kind of like why? Because you kind of just get given up on the team. It feels like to me at least, but guys want to do, I guess, what's best for them. Maybe they don't want to get hurt. Maybe they are hurt and didn't say something. So I'm like, okay, fine. kind of is your prerogative. But I actually trained with Caleb Downs one time, just like at a DB session because he's from the Atlanta area. And I remember seeing because I was 2 years older than him, I'm like, damn, that kid can move. I'm like, he was probably like you see certain guys work out or train, and you're like, yeah, they're different. Like when I saw Caleb Downs train, I'm like, shoot, he looked exactly like Kyle. And Kyle Hamilton, he plays safety for the Ravens. Like he's just like so like explosive out of his breaks and so smooth. I was like, yeah, I see why he's. I don't think he was committed to Bama at the time. 'Cause I think he was in 10th grade and I was in 12th. But I was like, yeah, I see why he's like a high recruit. Like some guys, like you'll see like they get offers and you see him working, you're like, I don't see it. But with him, I'm like, yeah, he deserves a Bama offer, Georgia offer, whatever. Like he looks like he's going to the league. Like you can just tell with some guys by the way like they train.
That and I think yeah, people want to point to like oh him going up for a ball or making an interception, but I feel like a college coach can know if you're one on one. I mean, there's times shoot even going through your high school film, there's times where you're exploding downhill and it's you one on one with the running back in the hole and you got to make a play and you come down and make the tackle. But they could see that explosiveness, how fast you can get down there. The running back is 2, 3 yards in the backfield and you meet him at the line of scrimmage from 10 yards deep as a safety or 12 yards deep, whatever it is, whatever coverage you're in. And you meet him in the
Mhm.
backfield from him trying to bounce it outside and being like 2, 3 yards down there. And by the time you explode, you're at the line of scrimmage and you make the play. I mean, the coaches can see that. And I feel like that's huge in getting recruited. It's not just how well you can cover. So obviously there are some guys that are just really coverage guys that can go up for the ball. But if you can do that and you're willing to get your nose in there and make a tackle, that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on, who's the most impactful coach you've ever had at any level of football, whether it's Pop Warner, high school, college? Shout them out and share the biggest lesson you've learned under their guidance.
Influential. Honestly, I guess I'd say there's two. So like just like my head coach and my defensive coordinator in high school. The coach Chadwick, he's a legend in Georgia high school football. He's three state titles. He's like over 400 wins. It's just like a really big achievement to have in high school. He's been coaching there for a long time. And my DC coach Euart, he was really good at like drawing things up and like he made the defense like really simple for us to understand. But like I could see how it'd be a nightmare for defenses. I mean for offenses to understand because all the things that we did do and we specialized in. So I think they were like two great coaches that really helped me my development because Chadwick is more so like a disciplined guy. Like we're gonna dress like this, we're gonna wear this. We're not going to talk back to the coaches, that type of thing, which honestly is very useful. And I always would be respectful to all my coaches because, like, sometimes things might get heated, but like, it doesn't mean you should like ever disrespect them, which I don't think I ever did throughout college. Like, of course, I get mad and I just be like on the sideline, like, okay, not happy. Like, maybe coach is yelling at me. I'm like, yes, sir, just take it. Just try to take whatever he says, learn from it because it's more so what he's saying, not how he's saying it. And then,
Exactly.
take it on to the next play. Hopefully you get it right the next time. So I think those are two super influential coaches that really helped me out no matter like however my career went.
Yeah, especially when you're the last line of defense on defense. Like if you let it get to your head and then you get beat deep again because you're thinking about the last play, it's like, well, shoot, now I'm really in my head. I just got beat deep twice or whatever it is. So that's a huge thing in football, whether it's being a defensive back, a quarterback, whatever it is. So when a coach is on you, just listen to what they're saying and not how they're saying it. I think you put it perfectly. And I think that's a huge note for whether it's college athletes, Pop Warner athletes, high school athletes, NFL guys. Like there's coaches that I feel like if a coach is getting on you, it's because they want what's best out of you. If a coach isn't yelling at you or isn't talking to you, then there's something wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like if they're yelling at you, they want to get what's best out of you so the whole team can win so you can benefit later on down the line. And I feel like a lot of it, the discipline and all this stuff, it teaches life lessons for these kids. It's not all about like, yeah, it would be great to make it to the NFL, but being on time, showing up at 7:20 versus showing up at 7:21 when you're supposed to be there at 7:20, showing up a little bit early versus showing up right on the dot or right at 7:21 a minute late. I think that's huge and crucial, not just in terms of football and a coach just saying like, oh, you can't do that. We're going to discipline you up, downs, whatever it is. That's not the point. It's like if you get a job in real life and you have to be there at 7:20 and you're there at 7:21, like you're fired. It's not just about football. Like sometimes that's just how it works. in terms of certain things. So I think that that is huge as well. And
Yeah.
looking back on your journey from UCLA to FAU and now as a content creator, what's one big piece of advice that you'd give to young aspiring athletes that may be wanting to get into the same space?
As for your college football decision, just like go where they want you more so than like the name brand of the school is what I would say, because playing is probably the most important thing. And you want a coach that believes in you versus a coach that'll just like tolerate you being there. Because of course, coaches will be like, "Oh yeah, we'll take you," but maybe they're in their mind they're thinking, "Okay, this is a depth guy that we can have." Versus other coaches are like, "I really believe in him to be the future of this defense, be the future of this program." So those are two very different things. As for content creation, I mean, we'll see with TikTok getting bad, but it's kind of just like you kind of just have to start. There's no like good way to start. You're not gonna go viral your first couple videos. It's just not gonna happen for like probably like 99% of people. You kind of just have to start and be consistent with it because I just did like honestly, I just started making TikTok videos and stuff just because like some of my teammates were. That's probably the only reason. And I was like, oh shoot, Sean already has 100K. Okay, Zay's making dancing videos. All right, cool. Let me try something. Like I'm not gonna copy them because like I know I'm not a dancer. I'm not gonna make dance videos. So like let me try something. And then I just stuck with it the last what that was 2021 to the last what I guess 3 years. It'll be 4 years in like June, I think. So I've just stuck with it and I've been able to make something out of it, which I'm proud of. I've been able to persevere through hard times. I feel like I'm getting no views and still post through times where I'm like, oh shoot, I'm getting a lot of views. So it's just being consistent. It's like be successful in anything.
And I think that last part, not even just with content creation, but also going back to with football, like sometimes you're getting no views, sometimes you're not getting looked at by the coaches, especially me being a former walk on, like I was a 0-star recruit, whatever it was at the time. It's like a lot of times I feel like, especially this is relating to college athletes, they're getting in their own head because they're like, oh, I'm so low on the depth chart. Like, how am I going to work my way up over these guys? Like the coaches love these guys and they're the same year as me or this or that. And it's like, well, these days with the transfer portal, guys are up and leaving. You don't even know why. So sometimes sticking it out, if you have that opportunity, if you don't really have a chance to make any NIL or benefit your family, sometimes it is best to stick it out and really grind through those tough times because, like I said before, at the end of the day, it'll make you a better man too. It's not always best to up and leave. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. And shoot, I've learned so much from the coaches that I've had because I've had some not so great coaches. Then I feel like I've learned from the best in both Garrett and Mike Kruczek, who Garrett Kruczek played quarterback at UCF under Scott Frost for a little bit, went to EKU, played with Tim Boyle over there, who's now a backup in the NFL, is backing up the Giants quarterbacks this year. So just having the opportunity to learn from the best, I feel like was huge in my development for me and being able to know what I knew about defensive coverage and offensive concepts, how we can beat this coverage no matter what the thing that I love about their offense is no matter what coverage the defense is in, there's always an answer offensively. And I think that that's huge. And I feel like some of these college coaches, especially defensive wise, like nowadays you see the best college coaches for the most part, all defensive minds, like Dan Lanning under under Nick Saban, defensive mind, Kirby Smart under Nick Saban, defensive mind, like Steve Sarkisian, obviously offensive guy. But a lot of these coaches, I mean, shoot, even Bill Belichick, big defensive mind. Bill Parcells, when he was in the NFL coaching, I'm sure Bill Belichick learned from him a little bit as well. Big defensive mind. Like a lot of these coaches, if they get a good offensive coordinator, a really good guy who can run that offense, it's like this defense is going to confuse a lot of people. And if we can get to the quarterback and get pressure with four, I've always been a big believer in that. I grew up a diehard Giants fan. And being a defensive guy, if you can get pressure with that front four, it makes playing coverage on the back end a lot easier because you have you have seven guys back there versus trying to rush six guys and then you only got five guys back in coverage and you're like hoping they get home because if not, like it's only a couple seconds until I get beat. So little things like that, really learning from coaches about different concepts. I think that was huge for my development as well.
Yeah, I bet. Especially as a quarterback, you have to be able to see everything. And from experience, if they get pressure with four, it's not going to end well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like I said, in terms of, especially in college, because it gets more complex in college, you see teams rolling coverage and trying to confuse you and whatnot. But when you're really game planning for that and you get those looks in practice, and it's not just like saying like, oh, we line up in it and we're going to run it. It's like, no, sometimes football is a reactionary game. I follow Austin Carter Samuels and KJ Carter Samuels, two guys doing great things with locked in QB, teaching more rotational mechanics versus throwing the traditional over the top, lot less arm pain, and a lot more guys are able to do it. That because a lot of coaches say like, oh, don't try to throw like Aaron Rodgers or don't try to throw like Patrick Mahomes. It's like, well, if you see Aaron Rodgers in college, he held the ball up to his face. So
Mhm.
he changed and he developed. So if you're not going to change, time's going to really pass you by, especially as a quarterback and even a defensive coach. Like coaches are always adapting to the game, always adapting to nuances because the game is always developing for the better athletes that are coming in. I mean, now you got defensive ends, defensive linemen that are running in the 4.4s. Like they didn't have that necessarily back in the day. So coverages are getting way more complex and offenses are getting more complex and things like that. So the game of football, it's a great life lesson to teach, and I would encourage my kids to play from a young age, and it's great for kids' development, not just on the field, but also mentally in life, how they take to their next thing, whatever they do after football, like content creation, like you said, no views to start, and now you're doing great, and you could really see yourself succeeding in that industry. And when you do that and you face some adversity, football, you're always going to face some adversity, whether it's you're down 20 points or you're getting crushed, you're losing by 1,000,000 points in high school or college or the NFL, you're always going to face some adversity. It's like, how can you get up and respond from
Yeah.
that and roll with the punches and say, okay, it's the fourth quarter. My stats as a quarterback, I'm 9 for 20, 100 yards and 3 interceptions, but the score is 9-6. We have one drive to go down and score. Can I just forget about all that, or am I going to be thinking about it? It's like you got to be able to forget about stuff like that, especially as a leader of the locker room, as a quarterback. You got to those other guys around you. They have to see like I'm confident. I know what I'm going to be doing to help lead this team down the field. I'm confident in the game plan. I'm confident in these coaches. I trust my receivers, running backs, offensive line. And when guys see that, especially as a quarterback, it drives me nuts when you see these guys getting up and yelling at the offensive line in like a derogatory way. Yeah, some guys you got to yell at and motivate them. But when you're like yelling at an offensive lineman, it's like these guys are blocking their butt off for you. They get no recognition for it. Even if you're getting hit, you just got to roll with the punches sometimes. I mean, that's part of the game. And when you can get hit and get back up and just forget about it, I mean, some really good examples. Like I said, I'm a diehard Giants fan. You got Eli Manning in the 2011 NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers, where he's got his helmet on the side of his face and he's like getting up like this, but they end up winning the game in overtime. So I know
Yeah.
you're a huge Patriots fan too. What do you think about Jerod Mayo getting fired and whether it was time and them getting screwed and really losing the number one pick the last week of the season?
Honestly, I think that 1 year isn't enough time for an NFL coaching staff, especially with a roster as depleted as the Patriots. However, I don't understand the logic in winning the game because you've been essentially been tanking all year. I don't know if you've been losing we probably haven't been losing on purpose all year, but like, I don't get why we would lose. We were 13 and or 3-13. I don't know why if we're that bad, why would you win the last game? I get it, Joe Milton's a good QB and he's gonna put points up on the board, but personally, I would have taken him out like, all right, cool. Joe, you did your thing for 3 quarters. We're kind of gonna coast this fourth quarter and secure this number one pick. I mean, that's what I would have done. I don't know if that's like anti-competitive or something, or people are like, oh, that's not the spirit of the game. Cool. Teams tank like that all the time. If it's the last game and all you have to do is lose to get the number one pick, the team's gonna do that. What do you think the
Yeah.
Browns, Panthers have been doing the last couple of years? Like that's just kind of how it is. So I would have rather had the number one pick because people say, oh, from 1 to 4, it doesn't matter much, but that's a lot of leverage because you could trade that number one pick down to 4 and probably get an extra first rounder out of that. So
Yeah.
don't understand the logic in winning that game, especially when the game was in our hands.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you had said, as a player, you're going to compete. Like this is your job, your family's where you're going to live is on the line. Like you might be getting traded or cut to another team. Like at that point, obviously, the trade deadline's over, but you might be getting cut at the end of the year. Like the players got to play. But like you said, from a coach's perspective, it's like just don't even start Joe Milton at all. You know what he can do going into next year if Drake May gets hurt. Start the third guy, start the practice squad guy. You don't even
Yeah.
want to put your team, if that's what you want to do, don't even put your team in a position where you might have a shot to win at the end of the game. And this is kind of going a little off track, but in terms of quarterbacks and their development, I think we saw Bryce Young take a huge step this year towards the end of the season. And honestly, I was kind of on Dave Canales about pulling him in week 2, but Bryce Young was really the perfect guy to do this to because Bryce Young, very level headed, as we all know, very humble. But if you were going to start Andy Dalton, especially being a new coach, I would have just started him from the beginning of the season because you could say, okay, Bryce, like we know we want to see what you can do, but we know what Andy can do. So if you could learn from his on-field mistakes rather than just throwing you into the fire in year 2, like I know you started last year, but if you give it a couple games and then we put you in there when you're fully ready, I think that might have been a little bit better for his development. We might have seen that spark that he gave the team a little bit earlier in the season rather than so late and then beating the Falcons in the last game and Jadeveon Clowney running over the fans saying, "We'll see y'all in Cancun," because he knocked them out of the playoffs. I thought that was a little
Yeah.
funny thing that he did there. But in terms of situations like that, I think coaches have to be really careful with quarterbacks because or any position, but especially quarterbacks, the spotlight on them. Just how can I put them in a position where I'm not going to kill their confidence? And like I said, Bryce Young is a guy where that won't happen. Maybe at first initially, and you see him in the locker room, maybe he's down a little bit, but give it a couple weeks, and he was obviously ready to rock and roll. So their situation worked out, but I do think that giving guys time to develop, especially Tom Brady had talked about it, when quarterbacks are able to sit for a good amount of time. I mean, you see Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre. You see what he learned from his mechanics. I mean, Brett Favre was just a gunslinger. And you see guys like Patrick Mahomes sitting behind Alex Smith. I mean, Alex Smith wasn't the best quarterback, but he was what they like to call a quote unquote game manager. And I'm sure he taught Patrick Mahomes a lot of things. And the scout team on defense, some of those guys, they even knew beforehand, before Pat Mahomes got in his first game ever against the Broncos, the last game that season, they knew like, hey, when he gets in, when it's his time, he's going to ball. And he did. And obviously he has been the starter ever since. But giving guys time to develop is huge. And obviously it goes both ways. Like Josh Allen played right away. He wasn't great at first, but then when he got more reps and he got Stephon Diggs, got better talent around him, that kind of changed things. But I'm a big believer in giving guys time to develop because you don't want to dumb these offenses down to be like dinky dunk. Like you want it to be sophisticated where like they have to learn how to read coverage because the NFL, obviously the coverage is more sophisticated than college. So
Yeah.
you really want to give these guys time to learn, whether it's on defense, on offense, and things like that. So I think quarterback, it's always best. I mean, shoot, even if you're getting some criticism, if they're a top 5 pick, but you have a guy that can go in right now and maybe play for the first couple of games of the season at least, then do that versus starting them and they're getting killed because they have no offensive line or something like that. And then you pull them and then you put them back in. It's just like a lot going on there. So little
Yeah.
things like that. But I don't know if you have any experience with guys or anything like that at DB, but
Uh, Honestly, with the whole development thing, I mean, practice was kind of like a whirlwind at, let's say, like at FAU, because I know for my first year there, I was at the threes a lot, and then I was up at the twos like occasionally, but then like we got a little more space because like some guys left, and then for my second year, I was with the twos, and then I was with the ones for like most of the spring, and then I don't know when camp came for that year, like so not this past year, but the year before, when camp came, I started with the ones, but then I ended up getting dropped down to the twos. What did I do wrong exactly? I don't know. Because as per all the coaches, I was balling in the spring. I'm like, I didn't change anything.
yeah.
Like maybe we had one more guy come in that they wanted to play over me because he was a sixth year guy, J-Mo. He was pretty good. Uh, he came from Texas State. So I guess they wanted to play him over me. They brought in a transfer. They want to play over me. Cool, I guess, whatever. That's just like how the game goes. But like, I feel like I did deserve to play more, but kind of is what it is. Because then during the season, I got mono, so I had to miss 2 weeks. And then after I came back, I like tore my ACL and all that stuff. So it's kind of just like super duper bad luck. It gets kind of just how the world works sometimes. You just get knocked down, you get knocked down again. So I just kind of had to double down on other stuff I was good at because my recovery with like the knee thing was not great just because like I had done so much to it. Like if it was a simple ACL, I probably would have been back and ready to go. Now, would they have kept me on the roster? I don't know, because it seems like they just wanted to move on from all the safeties that were from before Coach Herman. Because I know like Draco was gone, Amari was gone, 30 was gone. Like they just like didn't want them there anymore. Even though like even 30, who Armani Adams, you played with him, I think, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
he was an all conference safety back in 2022. I think he had broke his leg early in 2023. And then like after that 2023 season, they really didn't want him to be on the team anymore, which is like it's an all conference guy or just kind of throwing away because he had an injury. Like he's getting back into the groove and now you just I don't understand that personally, but like, coaches they're gonna do what they want to do, but some stuff I just look at their decisions, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like that
Well,
doesn't make sense. But
yeah, honestly, the biggest thing that I want to take from this whole coaches conversation that we're talking about too is I just want coaches to be able to be honest with players. Like you honestly, like people say, oh, sometimes they have to lie to just be able to say like, oh, it's an open competition, this, and that. No, they don't. I mean, as a quarterback, you're coming in and saying like, I mean, shoot, even the Arch Manning situation where he's sitting behind Quinn, like Steve Sarkisian has repeatedly said, hey, Quinn's our guy, Quinn's our guy. And I think that's been great because that gives Quinn confidence. He's not like putting it up in the air or anything like that. I think for you in your situation, I mean, if a coach, you probably would have at least respected him more. If he would have just said, like, hey, we got some guys at DB here at UCLA that can absolutely play, but we want you to learn and develop from them so you can end up being a superstar and you could follow them into the NFL. Like when you hear things like that, a coach being straight up honest with you and saying, like, look, you might not play your first second year. I get that you're a 4-star or a top guy, but we're going to help you not only on the field, but academically. Like we care about you as a person, not just we care about our team success or this, and that. I want to see coaches care more about the individual success of the players. And I mean, shoot, like Nick Saban had kind of talked about with the Henry Ruggs situation. I mean, obviously that's awful. He never had a problem at Alabama in terms of any discipline issues, but and Saban had said if one of his friends would have taken his keys away when he was a little bit intoxicated, that whole situation wouldn't have happened, and the woman wouldn't have tragically died in that situation. But at the end of the day, that is Henry Ruggs' decision. Like I completely get where Saban's coming from. Henry Ruggs is at fault, and Saban obviously knows that. But in terms of in terms of college guys too, this kind of leads into what I'm talking about now. You want to be hanging out with the right guys on the team. You don't want to be hanging out with somebody that wouldn't take your keys away from you in that situation. I know that's kind of a tough thing to do, but if you really want what's best for your brother, like you're gonna do those things and put yourself in uncomfortable situations sometimes and be like, hey, like you're not driving tonight. Just stay at my place. You and whoever you're with are more than welcome to stay. Just sometimes putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation and reaching out to try to help somebody is a little bit better than letting him go 156 miles an hour down the road and killing somebody. Like I said, that's ultimately his decision, but little things like that. And I'm just glad that these coaches that learned under Saban, like Dan Lanning and some of these guys are getting some recognition, and Saban has kind of set that tone. You see why these guys are great too, because Saban really, I think he really did love his players. Like regardless of guys transferring out of Alabama and whatnot, I do think that he did.
yeah, I absolutely do think too that Saban he cares about everybody. He's rough on them because he knows how great they can be. So yeah, completely agree.
And yeah, really with what he's doing now, I love what he's doing on College Game Day with Pat McAfee and the guys. And
Mhm.
him and Pat McAfee have really revived College Game Day. Pat McAfee doing the crazy stuff where he's doing the whole Georgia chant last year, and then he's saying, "Give me Alabama to break all the hearts of the Georgia fans," whatever. Like, I just love that. How can you not? And Nick Saban bringing his knowledge to the set. I mean, that's just absolutely remarkable. So I'm glad we got to talk about really everything that we've discussed in terms of coaches, players, and your situation and being in content creation, being able to aspire young athletes that are looking to get into the same role. And I'm just really glad we got to have you on here today. And any last thoughts about just like you had said, inspiring these young guys?
I would just
Yeah.
say that keep going, keep trying, keep persevering because your opportunity will show up at like the craziest times and you want to make sure that you're ready for it, whether that is staying at your school, maybe if you already decided to leave and you're in a new place, just like keep your head down, keep working, and also look out for yourself because your coach should have your best interest at heart, but sometimes that isn't always the case. So just always like stay vigilant and honestly just know your playbook. Because if you know your playbook in and out, that's one thing no one can take away from you. And when you're on the field balling, eventually they're gonna have to realize we have to play him. Even if you might think, oh, my coach doesn't like me, yada yada. If you know your playbook perfectly and you know all of your checks and you do that on the field, eventually they're gonna have no choice but to be like, all right, he's balling, we have to play him. Like we wanted to play this other guy maybe because we paid him, but no, we have to play him. He gives us the best chance to win. So I would just
Yeah,
follow those things and just do your best every time you're out there because when you're not out there, you're gonna wish that you could be back out there.
exactly. And it kind of goes back to the coaches with the ego thing too. It's like even though we're paying this guy's playing better. We got to put him in for the best interest of our team, the best interest of the fans. Like it doesn't matter. Like we got to do what it takes to win. Yeah, we gave this guy plenty of opportunities because he's getting paid, but at the same time, this guy's doing better than him. It takes like a coach to put him in because obviously, like you've had your situation with coaches and putting in their guys because they want them to be successful to make them look good. And obviously, Herman's situation didn't necessarily work out at FAU, but yeah, in terms of situations like that with coaches, I think that's honestly a very big thing. And as a player, like you had said, just you want to be going where you're wanted. You don't want to go somewhere where it's like, okay, because I was like this coming into a situation where I was walking on at FAU. I was like, oh yeah, I know they might not necessarily really want me here. Like they had expressed that to me. Like David Kelly did want me, and they were going to give me some opportunities and stuff like that. And I have nothing but respect for David Kelly. He was great in my entire situation at FAU. But honestly, me leaving and hitting the transfer portal myself, I was kind of in my own head. And that's the one thing that I want college athletes to take out of it is sometimes it's better to just wait. Mitch Trubisky, I mean, he's a good example. His career obviously didn't pan out in the NFL, but he is in the NFL. He's a backup. He waited 3-4 years, played his senior year at North Carolina, balled out. He's a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So even if you're at a group of five school, if you wait all the way till the end of the fourth year, I know it's a kind of a different situation with NIL now, but sometimes if you do wait it out, it does benefit you at the end of the day. So I kind of
Yeah.
just wanted to end it off with that. Appreciate you joining us here on Cone's Cadence and look forward to talking with you soon and meeting you back down there in Boca Raton.
Yeah, great having me. I thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course, anytime. If you've made it to this point in the video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Nothing gets me fired up like football. Let's go.